Okay. Alright, sorry, I had to go get my food out of the oven. Anyway, but yeah, so generally speaking, that's how I kind of view, that's how I judge things on if they're right and wrong, and, and so when it comes to, the politics, I don't just give blind allegiance to any one view or one side. Like, I may be, even if I'm very, very heavily critical, and very, 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 perhaps overtly positive about one thing and very, very critical about another thing, it doesn't mean that I'm incapable or unwilling to ever see anything good in the criticized thing, or ever to see anything bad in the good thing. For example, I don't even need to tell you my position about the war, that was started after the October 7th war and all of that, and those 2 years of fighting and all of that stuff. I don't need to tell you guys, obviously you know my feelings about that. But I also, many of you also know, am very, very passionate that we need to seek justice, or justice needs to be delivered for Hind Rajab, who was a 6-year-old Palestinian girl who was needlessly killed, murdered, I would say, that was murdered by the IDF for no reason. I've looked at that case from multiple angles, and there's no way out of it. There is no self-defense in this case. There's no reasonable way. Those soldiers just murdered a little girl. Why? I don't know. You'll have to ask them. But they just straight up and knowingly killed a little girl, and then when paramedics came to try and save the little girl, who was alive but injured, they killed them too so that they couldn't save the little girl. They killed the paramedics while they were on the way to save her, and then she died, of course. And I've looked at this from multiple angles, and there's absolutely no justification whatsoever. This is just an act of murder, and this is a war crime. This is a war crime. And the soldiers that are responsible for that need to be taken and put on trial before the Israeli High Supreme Court, and they need to be locked up and sentenced to life in prison for murder. They're murderers. Those IDF soldiers that killed Hind Rajab are Rishayim. They're murderers. They're wicked people, and they need to be held accountable. And justice needs to be done for the horrible crime of them murdering a sweet little 6-year-old girl for no reason. So obviously, you see that I'm passionate about justice, and I don't just blindly that's my side, so I'm going to agree with them all the time, no matter what they say. Like, hey Moshe, your news side, this news side that you're so into, they said that they literally want to kill and eat babies. How do you feel about that? Well, I wouldn't do it, but I'm not going to criticize it. I'm not that person. So, give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I'm making hot dogs, and one of my hot dogs didn't cook well enough, so I put it for another 3 minutes. But I didn't want to stop, make a 4-minute video, then make another 10-minute video, and then so I figure whatever, I'll just go do it real quick. Anyway, so yeah, so this is unprecedented, and this is absolutely incredible what's going on in the Middle East. It's things that we thought would never change ever are like changing like that before our eyes. It's absolutely amazing. And I want to talk about now about, I finished my book that I was reading, The Proof of God Project, and it was a really good book. I enjoyed it. And it actually really, really did change my mind on a lot of stuff. As I mentioned in a previous video, I now believe in dualism, whereas I didn't before. Now dualism is the belief that I now believe, and I believe that there is sufficient data, scientific, there's real reason. I don't just believe this because I want to believe. No, I mean, I really believe, after what I've read and I've thought about it, I really do believe now that there is both a physical world of matter and mass and atoms and neutrons and all that, but I believe there's also a spiritual non-material realm that exists as well. And I believe that we can, I believe it exists, and I believe it can be proven to exist. Now, the details on it, I don't believe we can possibly know more than basically, what people report. We can't know any absolutely like hard, concrete, 100%, certainty. Then again, we can't know that with anything in science, because that's not how science works. Science is not creating immovable ideas that can never be challenged. That's the exact opposite of science. The whole point of science is to challenge things and to examine things and to look them over and over and over from different angles and different points of view and, etc. But I feel that criterion has been met with these not new beliefs, but with the idea of dualism, of that the physical world is not the only world that it exists. And now there's some other stuff in the book though, like there's where he talks about like heaven and people that say they've gone to heaven and people that say they've gone to hell. I don't find those chapters quite as persuasive as some of the other ones. I enjoyed reading them, and I did agree to a large extent with what they were saying, but I didn't agree with them completely. And so, those chapters were not particularly moving for me. The chapters that really stood out the most for me, that were the most impactful, were the ones about near-death experiences, which, to a certain degree, that's almost like the core of the whole book's argument, is talking about different cases of that. Now, it's a lot more than that. I don't mean to put the book down or make it sound, limited or dry and boring or anything, but it does talk a lot about that, and I would say that'd be the bulk of the main thrust of the book's argument. But it also talks about other stuff, such as the fine-tuning argument, which I don't feel like going over that right now here. If you want to know about it, you can look it up. The fine-tuning, F-I-N-E-T-U-N-I-T, sorry, start over. F-I-N-E, fine-tuning, T-U-N-I-N-G, fine-tuning of the universe. Type in fine-tuning of the universe or fine-tuning, proof of God, something like that, go Google it and you can learn about it. And then I talked about biogenesis, the idea that life cannot come, living organic matter cannot come from dead matter. Life cannot come from non-life. Life comes from life. Life only comes from life. Ever. There is no case. There is absolutely zero case of life coming from non-life. So the chapter that explores that I found quite convincing as well. Now that I've started having this shift in perspective and stuff, it's also, and I kind of already saw this before, but it feels like now this is even more glaring and obvious to me, is I don't want to sound weird or crazy or anything, but we're witnessing the hand of God. Straight up. We are seeing the divine hand making its way through not through history, through right now. We're living through history right now. Every day on the news, we're seeing blessing and goodness from God. We're seeing a lot of fear and a lot of bad stuff. Absolutely. I'm not negating that. I'm certainly not denying that. But look what's happened in only 2 years. 2 years ago, a bunch of insane, wild, lunatic, extremist, Islamo-supremacist terrorists, thousands of them, invaded southern Israel, and they went on a rampage, raping women, decapitating infants, cutting off babies' heads, raping children, gang raping toddlers repeatedly to the point that they die from exhaustion and blunt force trauma and internal bleeding and all of that. A baby burned alive in front of its parents in their kitchen oven home right before the terrorists, the monsters, killed the parents as well. Just because they did that on purpose, because they wanted the parents to watch their baby die. They wanted the mother and the father to hear, "Ah! Ah! Ah!" And I'm not doing that to be silly or make fun. I'm doing that to be real. They wanted to hear, "Ah! Ah! Ah!" They wanted them to hear that, and to see that, and to smell that. And then they killed them as well. A woman who was pregnant had her stomach cut open, her fetus removed, and then its head decapitated while she was awake and fully alive and conscious, while her husband and her other 2 children were tied up and forced to watch it happen. And then lastly, a beautiful young woman, a beautiful mother, and her it's always hard for me to talk about this. And her 2 small children Kafir Bibas and Ariel Bibas, ages 1, I believe, and 3 or 2.5. Just under 2 years old, the 2.5-year-old one at the time of their murder. And then the younger one, only about a little over a year old. I believe about 8 or 9 months old at the time of their kidnapping. And then their mother, Sherry, who I believe was 32. I might be off on that, though. And do you know how they killed them? They strangled them to death. And then they took pipes and rocks and bludgeoned the bodies so that they could lie and say, oh, we didn't kill them. They were killed during an Israeli raid. They died in the rubble. Problem with that is that Israel has some of the best forensic researchers and scientists and medical researchers and everything and medical experts in the entire friggin' planet. Okay, who it's not, you can't just pull a fast one over on them like that. And they identified they examined the bodies and they said no, they were strangled to death. They were strangled to death before the bludgeoning. The bludgeoning was done afterwards to try and cover it up. Of course, you have these idiots. Oh, well, the Hamas didn't even kill anybody. It was actually Israel killing their own people. It was called the Hannibal Directive. Now, forget the fact that Israel has never actually had this as a policy. It was a policy. It still technically is a policy, but it's sort of like the draft in the United States. Yes, it's on the books, but it's not enforced. And it's only ever been enforced once or twice, a couple very, very, very rare and far between times. I'm not even going to explain what it is because it's not worth it. It's not worth explaining it because you could just Google it. It's very simple. Alright, fine. I guess I'll break it down just to make it easy so you guys don't have to go. The Hannibal Directive is the false, made-up concept and smear against the state of Israel that there's an official directive by the military that when military personnel, especially, but even it could also apply to civilians, are being kidnapped by terrorists, that it is the policy of the Israeli Defense Forces to shoot to kill those being kidnapped before, so that they cannot be kidnapped, so that they can't be held as leverage by the terrorists. The only problem with this is that has almost literally never happened. I think there may have been one or two instances way back in, like, maybe the early 2000s or something. But overall, that is not a widespread practice. That it was not done on October 7th. There's zero evidence of that. There's zero evidence of that. Of course, it doesn't matter. All the fucking racists and Jew haters, you can show them all the evidence in the world till they're blue in the face, and they're still just gonna go, Hannibal Directive, 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 Hannibal Directive. You see how that gets old fast? Or Mossad, it's Mossad, or, and there's the ones that they really want to think they're real brainy and they use the big words and they're so smart. PSYOP, which is where the Israeli government does some sort of military operation or whatever, some kind of thing to divert people's attention from the actual more serious thing that's going on. Even often not even actually doing anything, but faking doing something to divert attention. And with that, what do you see? You bring up October 7th, you bring up the hostages, you bring up all of the years of bus bombings and terrorism in the second Intifada, terrorism in the first Intifada, the fact that in Hamas's own charter it says over and over and over and over and over that their mission is to take over Palestine and then to establish an Islamic Sunni theocratic government and to physically expel, subjugate, or if neither of those options are taken, just outright kill and exterminate every single non-Muslim living in the land between the river and the sea. Hamas wants to take over Palestine and actually, literally, ethnically cleanse and or genocide every Jew and Christian and Baha'i and Hindu and Buddhist and all non-Muslims in Israel. That's what they want. It's that it even quotes one of the maybe even the most infamous of all the hadiths. The hadiths are a collection of writings, which are the sayings and stories of the life of Muhammad. And the idea is that you study the hadiths to learn how to imitate him, because the ideal Muslim is the Muslim who imitates Muhammad's ways. That's what hadiths are. Okay, so there's a very famous hadith that says, the last and this is quoted in full in the Hamas charter, outright. It says, "And the last day will not come until the very stones and the trees themselves shall cry out and say, 'Oh, Muslim, come! There is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him.'" And then there's a famous, not famous. Well, it is kind of famous, but there's a documentary. One of the first times I ever learned about just how crazy Islamist supremacism is. You should go watch it. I think it's free on YouTube. It's called Obsession: Radical Islam's War Against the West. It's a fantastic movie. I don't agree with everything in it, but I do agree with a lot of what it says, especially in the first part of the film. One of the things it brings up is that story, and it shows a cleric speaking to this huge crowd. I believe it was in Egypt, and he's saying in Arabic, and it's translating. He's saying, he says, "We know the last day will not come until the trees and the stones shall rise up, and they shall call out, and they will say, 'Ya Muslim, come! There is a Jew behind me. Come and cut off his head.'" And then he unsheaths this big curved sword out of his side, and then holds it up, and then says to the cheering crowd, "Albi Yahud!" And to the Jews, he goes, "We swear by Allah, we will cut it off. We will do that for victory, for Allah, because we are the strong ones, the nations of Muhammad." And then you see the crowd just going nuts, just losing their fucking shit. Yeah! And that's Hamas. And that's what Hamas is. And that's what the Iranian regime is. And that's what the Houthis are. That's what all of these people are. And that's what Zoran Mamdani is. And that's what Indy Nile is. And the Indy Nile, the Palestinian, the queer Amsterdam guy who I'm talking about that I fucking can't stand. And that's who, that's who Boko Haram is. That's who Al Qaeda is. That's who the Taliban is. That's what groups in Somalia are. That's what groups in Pakistan. The people that murdered Daniel Pearl, Lava Shalom. The people who went and attacked this is many years ago, attacked the synagogue in Mumbai, the Chabad synagogue, and murdered that a rabbi, and murdered his whole family. I think he only had like one son that survived, one pre-bar mitzvah, like one 10-year-old boy, I think, or something like that, that survived. Or what happened a few weeks, if not a month ago, on Bondi Beach. What happened in New York on September 11th. What happened in Boston, in the Boston Marathon bombing. What happened in the Pulse nightclub bombing. What happened in the early to mid 2000s, when you had suicide bombing after suicide bombing coming from Hamas and PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, coming out of Gaza. Right now the genocide in Sudan, where black Africans are being slaughtered by Arab Islamist supremacist roving killers, roving killing gangs, massacring thousands of innocent people. What happened in Baslan, in not Georgia, Chechnya, and by the way, I will say, to the Chechnyan people's credit, they are oppressed and they do have a right to resist. But they don't have a right to resist by holding a school of small children who have nothing to do with the conflict hostage and then murdering dozens of them. Innocent children, kindergarten, primary school. We're not even talking about teenagers, like little kids, little babies, maybe not infants, but like preschool age, like little kids, slaughtered. The missiles that were fired into from northern Lebanon or from southern Lebanon and in northern Israel, they killed those Druze children who were just innocently living their lives playing soccer in the park. When Boko Haram kidnapped all of those girls, and we've never seen them again. For all we know, they're probably all either dead or sold into slavery somewhere around the world, or the Middle East. Only God knows where. ISIS, when ISIS exterminated Yazidis and Zoroastrians and Assyrian Christians and other non-Muslim groups, when ISIS was holding the power over Iraq, what about the oh God, the what was it? Not the synagogue, no, the I can't remember. There was another good example, but I just it slipped out of my head. Anyway, I know I've gone on a very long-winded thing, and I've given so many examples. You're probably like, all right, we get it. But I did that for a reason, because I want you to think about all of those different examples that I just gave, and I want you to realize that they all come from the same source. Every single one of them can be traced back to the exact same ideology. The ideology of Islamo-supremacism. Islamo-supremacism is a political belief that believes that only the religion of Islam deserves to exist. And that this is not just a matter of religion the way we think in the West about religion. Yeah, happy Easter, go to church on Sunday. No, Islam, a lot like Judaism, but in a much harsher way, is it's a total system. Islam is not just a religion. Yes, it is an ideology. It's a religion. It's not a race. It's not an ethnicity. It is an ideology. It's an idea. It's a religion. Okay, it's a set of concepts. It's not a race. It's not something like genetic. You're not born automatically Muslim. You may be born into a Muslim family and grow up Muslim, but it's not like there's no genetics to being Muslim. It's a religion. It's an ideology. But oh God, come on. Damn it. That's what I was gonna say. Right. So it's an ideology, and it's the ideology, just as the name suggests, that Islam should be the supreme way of life for all humanity all the time. And the ultimate goal is to conquer the world and create this global caliphate where the entire world will be subjugated to Islam. And that's called Islamo supremacism. Now, what is the difference between that and mainstream Islam? Okay, I'm not going to get into, like, that's a whole... We're not going to go into those weeds today. Maybe I'll make another video on that. So I'm not saying that Muslims are bad people. I'm not saying even necessarily that Islam in and of itself, although it's not my favorite religion, I'll be honest. But I'm not even saying that being Muslim, just that alone will make you violent. No, I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is that not that being Muslim will make you violent, but Islamo supremacism definitely will. In other words, I'm saying that our enemies are not all Muslims, not even most Muslims. But there is a considerable minority of Muslims who have some really, 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 really fucked up ideas about the world and how it works, or how the world's supposed to work according to their vision. And it is sick, my friends. It is sick. I mean, we're talking about child marriage. We're talking about a 54-year-old man becoming engaged to a 6-year-old and then consummating that marriage when she was 9. Okay. So I don't have the rosiest picture of Islam. But I don't believe that all Muslims are bad people. I don't believe that just simply being Muslim inspires you to be violent and be a terrorist. In fact, something pointed out in that movie, and that I point out all the time when I bring this up, and that a lot of Westerners are starting to learn this, but that a lot of them unfortunately still don't know. Do you know that the majority of the victims of the Islamo supremacists are fellow Muslims? The majority of the people who suffer from Islamic terror, extremist-inspired Islamic terror, are Muslims. In fact, they're often the first ones to suffer before everybody else. A lot of people don't know that. Because Islamo supremacism is not about religion. It's an evil, twisted, dark, violent, hateful, destructive ideology that it literally... See, Islam... I mean, again, we get into the weeds with that, but let's just say, generally speaking, Islam is in fact, President Trump actually said to a whole big gathering of Muslim world leaders, I believe it may have been in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, but I'm not sure about that. He said, I'm going to butcher it so you can look up the exact quote for yourself. But basically the gist of it was, he said, look, we're all religious people here. We all believe in God. We all believe in religion. And we all worship God. But these people, he said this to a room full of high-ranking Muslim officials and leaders and government people from different countries, Muslim nations. He said, we worship God. Those people, the people that crash planes into skyscrapers, that kidnap people, that grape women and children, and that just caused nothing but chaos, violence, destruction, and misery for everybody, those people don't worship God. Those people, they worship, and we've been saying this for decades now to you guys, by the way. It's nice that the West is finally starting to wake up a little bit. Those people worship death. They are a death cult. They are not a religion. They are not a political movement. Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or PIJ, the PFLP, People for the the People's Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, something like that, which is yes, is a more Marxist, secular oriented ideology that they have. They don't want to create an Islamist theocratic state. They want to create a communist Palestinian state. Now, in the end of the day, they still want to kill all the Jews, and get rid of all the Jews and all the non-Muslims. At the end of the day, that's still very much on the table. But so even though they're kind of like a communist group, they're sort of also Islamists. Like that's why we call it the Red Green Alliance. The far left, the radicals, the communists, the democratic socialists, all these lunatics, all these psychotic people, and the Islamic supremacists, they're all best friends. They've linked up with each other in this super bizarre allyship, which makes no sense whatsoever to anybody with even a modicum of intelligence whatsoever. But all of this it's changing. In just the last 2 years, so much has changed. It's mind-blowing. And where's the media, by the way, with Iran, like, going through such a seismic change? Where's all the big news stories? Where, as of now, the Iranian regime has murdered 2,000 people. They've killed 2,000 of the protesters. These are mostly unarmed civilian people. We're not talking about, yes, it has broken out into civil war and there's fighting and everything. But the 2,000 people that the regime has killed, the vast majority of them were not fighting. They not violently. They were protesting with signs, marching, but they were not fighting with violence. And the regime cracked down on them and killed them. They killed 2,000 people. Innocent people. But they do that, and then the cycle goes around, the news makes its rounds, and everybody hears, and then what's the conclusion? Israel is the bad guy. What the actual fuck? The Iranian regime, an Islamist supremacist, homophobic, misogynistic, Jew-hating, racist, religious supremacist ideology is falling. That has enslaved a nation of people under its boots, under the heel of its boots for decades now, is finally going away. The people of Iran will be free once again. This is something truly mind-blowing. So let me ask you a question. Where are all the pro-Palestine people now? All of these wonderful people who care about democracy and freedom and human rights and this and that and that and that and that. Where are they right now? While there is a literal civil war, the biggest uprising, maybe not the number one biggest, but certainly one of the biggest uprisings in the last 50, not 50 plus years in that region. Sorry, let me collect my thoughts for a second. But where are all the pro-Palestine people fighting for the people of Iran? Where are their protests? Because they don't care. They don't give a shit. Nobody fucking cares. You know why? Because there's no way to blame Israel. People seem to only care, not everybody, but a lot of people seem to only care. Sorry, be right back. Oh, God, this is killing me. There we go. Oh, yeah, that's the spot. Woo! Oh, thank you, Shem, for back scratchers. Sorry, guys, to do that no video, but oh, God, it was bad. Alright, so, you know, all of these people who were free Palestine, where are they now? They're nowhere. Where's the uproar on behalf of the people of Iran who are literally risking their lives against one of the most powerful and influential and most evil regimes on planet Earth, are finally, after decades of being subjugated to these monsters, are finally fighting back and reclaiming their freedom. And this is a literally world-changing seismic colossal event that's going to have ramifications and consequences for the entire globe, for the rest of history, for the entire human race. This is a major change in everything. This is literally, well, not literally, because Hashem does not have a body, but this is the Yad Hashem. This is the hand of God playing out in real time. And because I read that book, and I'm starting to, well, you know, I read that book, so now I know everything about everything. No, I'm kidding. I read that book, and it influenced me, and it's like I would have seen it before, but it's like now I see it even clearer. Like the Yad, I can see it even more clear. The Yad Hashem, the hand of God, moving history, changing things for the better. It's amazing. How can you not be excited about it? And where are all these left-wing people? Where are all these people? Hello? Anyone there? Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's just they don't care. I guess, you know, when you can't blame Israel or the Jews, no one's interested. Who gives a shit? It's unbelievable. There's this great little song, like a comedy song. It's actually a real banger of a song too. I mean, it's entertaining, but it's a pretty good song. It's if you want, I'll include a link in my comments on my Facebook about this episode. It's a song about the hypocrisy of the news, with regards to Israel and everything. And there's this one part which is so brilliant. It's like one of the best lines in the song. And they go, they say, and I might get it a little bit wrong, but I'm gonna try to get as well as I can to quote it. They go, They chant and whine, hold up signs that say queers for Palestine. But in the strip, that same old sign would earn them a drop from roof to spine. They back a place that bans their name, but it's okay as long as they've got Jews to blame. And it's true. It's so true. They back a place that bans their name, but it's fine as long as they've got Jews to blame. It's true. It's mommy's true. It is the MS. It is the truth. So, needless to say, of course, I'm very excited by these results and with everything that's happening. And I'm on fire. I'm energized. I'm excited. I really feel like Hashem is working in my life, like in ways that I couldn't see before. And I just want to talk one more thing. I want to end off with I got this book. It's called The Hasidic Moses. And it's oh, here, I'll read this. I'll read you the not the reviews, but I'll read you the synopsis. In The Hasidic Moses, Rabbi Aryeh Weinman invites readers to join him on a journey through various 18th and 19th century Hasidic texts and interpret you know what I mean. Interpret the life of Moses from the Bible. Oh, really, Moshe? That Moses. Like, the life of Jesus. The one from the Bible? Such texts read their own accent on spirituality and internet and interness, along with their conceptions of community and spiritual leadership, into the biblical account of Moses. The biblical account of Moses. You know, just in case you confused it with all those other accounts of the life of Moses that don't exist. Rabbi Weinman reveals the ways in which historical Hasidic voices interpreted both the Exodus from Egypt and the scene of the divine revelation at Sinai as statements concerning what occurs constantly in our lives at all times. In addition, Rabbi Weinman shows how Hasidic readers embraced the idea that Moses had to die in order that his soul might return to the world in the form of righteous and holy ones of every generation. So that's the thing that they say, that every righteous person, every tzaddik, every righteous person, every righteous Jew has a tiny piece of the soul of Moses in them. Because Moses is the greatest human being to ever live in Judaism. I mean, in the Jewish worldview, it's a sin. It's one of the fundamental foundations of Judaism is that to believe that Moses was the greatest human being to ever exist. If you don't believe that, you're in violation of the Torah. It's a Torah commandment to believe that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was the greatest human being that ever was or ever will live. Even greater than Mashiach himself. Even greater than the Messiah. As great as the Messiah will be. And even as great as King David, my namesake, from my middle name, David Melech. And David Melech, King David, is the second greatest person who's ever existed. Moses is the first and King David is the second. And I happen to have both their names, Moshe David. So Rabbi Weinman shows that I'll just go back. In addition, Rabbi Weinman shows how Hasidic readers embrace the concept. They embrace the idea that Moses had to die in order that his soul might return to the world in the righteous and holy ones of every generation, and that the presence of Moses actually transcends time and is present in spiritual understanding as it unfolds at any moment in any period, which is one of the reasons that the Gemara, the Talmud, says that the Gemara says that the righteous, the tzaddikim, the holy people, are even more alive, and are even more holy and righteous after their death. Because after their death, they no longer have to struggle in the world of temptation and resisting the urge to sin, and if they do sin, having to do tshuva, repentance, and all of that, they're dead. Their mission is over. Now, and they're no longer caught and trapped by the physical limitation of this world. So now their immaterial, non-physical, their soul, their neshama, can now reach into so many different areas and bring bracha and blessing and encouragement and all kinds of wonderful things. That's not to say that we pray to the tzaddikim, or that we believe, or that we appeal to the tzaddikim, God forbid, in any sort of an idolatrous fashion, or we're not like the Christians. We don't believe that Moses or any tzaddik dies for our sins, or is the Son of God, or any of that stuff. No, all the belief says is that tzaddikim, righteous people, are even greater after their death because their spiritual influence has even more power than it did when they were living, because they're not bound by the physicality of this world any longer. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that we pray to them, or that their death atones for our sins, or any of that stuff. And again, hey, if you're a Christian and that's what you believe in, mad respect. I think those beliefs are incorrect. I think they're wrong and false. Not wrong as in you're a bad person for having them, but wrong as in they're just objectively not true. But I still, of course, can respect people's right to believe it, and even honor their right to believe it, especially if it makes them a better person in some way. You know what I mean? That's basically what this book is about. I wanted to hear a Hasidic twist on the life of Moses. So, and I'm reading it, and so far it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. It's a good book. But anyway, definitely go out there if you haven't yet and go get this book. Now, I will say there's a lot of Christian stuff in this book. A lot of Christian stuff. But you can actually just skip over those parts and read the more general areas, like about, abiogenesis, that only life can come from life, or the numerous things about the near-death experiences. In fact, it's funny because there's a part where it talks about heaven, and I'll end with this because this video has already gotten very, very long. There's a part where it ends with them giving a description of one of the people who had a near-death experience, them talking about their time in heaven. And it's funny because I think that the guy that wrote the book and people reading it, particularly Christians, are going to think something, and at first it might seem so obvious. It might even seem to be well, how can you even be Jewish then and not be Christian, given that that's what people have seen? But you'll see. You'll see it's actually the opposite. What it is that many people said that when they died, they saw in heaven basically the vision, from the Old Testament, of Ezekiel's chariot, which is a mystical vision that was given to Yechezkel, or the prophet, blessed be his memory and name, Ezekiel from the Old Testament. And it's if you want to look it up, it's called Ezekiel's chariot. And amongst all of the imagery that's described there is that it says that riding on the chariot is the image of the likeness of a man, of a human being. So, of course, all the Christians immediately think, oh, that's Jesus! That's Jesus! That's Jesus! They're like, so they get so excited about it too. And by the way, I love Christians. Half of my family are Christians. I believe very strongly in Western values, and especially in our Judeo-Christian roots and foundations of those values and of our Western civilization. So please, don't think I'm making fun or trying to belittle or mock Christian people. I love Christians. Christians are some of our... It's Jews. Ironically, Christians were our enemies in the past and persecuted, hated us. Now they're our biggest allies. Now we're friends. You know, so don't get twisted. I love Christians. I really do. I don't believe in their religion, and I would argue till I'm blue in the face at them about their theology and why I don't accept it and believe it for myself. But there are so many great things about Christianity that in general you can really say have become really part of the Western culture, you know, which I believe very, very strongly in. But so these people, the Christians see that and they get so excited again. Yes, I knew it! Because what other man could it possibly be talking about? So, are you ready for the Jewish answer to this? At first, it might kind of even sound like, that sounds like a kind of a cop-out. But then when I explain, you'll see why that actually is the more likely explanation. The Jewish explanation, and even more particularly, I read, like, from a Hasidic mystical perspective, the idea is that man that people are seeing when they go to heaven and they see the chariot and the throne, that man is not an actual person. He's not an actual single individual person who's alive or whoever was alive. He's not any particular, he's not like a guy. Like, he's not like, oh, Steve, he's Steve, or Beryl, he's, or Moshe, he's not Moshe. He doesn't have a name, he doesn't have a family, he doesn't come from anywhere. Well, I mean, he was created by God, obviously, but, so, what he is he is real. He's an actual being that exists. He's not a fake being. He is a real being. He really does exist. But the purpose of his existence is a symbol. It's symbolic, and it's symbolic of the divine human connection. He's standing there, he's standing there in the court of God, shining God's light, representing God in the heavenly court. And the people say the fullness of the love and the chesed, the ahava, the love, the chesed, the grace, the beauty, the majesty, the glory, all of this is felt fully. The complete and total, full and absolute glory of God is not just seen, not just like thought of, but actually felt, experienced in every possible way that you could understand that term, the term experience. It radiates from this being, this purity, this love that people just say is the most beautiful and complete thing they've ever experienced. But in Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism and Jewish mystical writings and Hasidic teachings, which are part of Hasidic Judaism, or Hasidic teachings, are basically the advanced, metaphysical, really high up there, theoretical ideas of Kabbalah, taken and broken down and then reinterpreted in ways that they can influence our lives, in our day-to-day lives, to make our lives more holy and more mystical and more spiritual. In a nutshell, that's the whole point of the Hasidic movement. And so, But so yeah, and so the idea though is this being is not is not an actual individual person who's ever lived at any one time. He doesn't have a name. He's not even an actual person. He's just a being. And the reason for his is the point of him is the reason that he stands at the literal epicenter of God's throne, right in the middle of God's glory, is to show and to symbolize that the entire purpose of all of creation, every galaxy, every star, every blade of grass, every wisp of air, every atom, every molecule, every neutron and proton, every electron, everything, mamish, everything was created for the ultimate purpose. Now, different things can have their different purposes that God assigned to them, obviously. But at the end of the day, the grand purpose, when it all comes together and it's all taken into account, the main purpose of everything, of why God made the universe, why God made the world and made people, is because God had a heart overflowing and practically bursting with love. And he wanted to give this love to something. But there was nothing there to give it to. So he created a world and a universe, and he created human beings with minds that would be capable of being in relationship with him, receiving his love, and then reciprocating back by giving the love back to him. You love your children, they love you, back and forth. And to have a real, living, or for lack of a better term, organic, true, visceral relationship and connection with us. And he knew that the best way to do that would be to give us the brain and intelligence that we have to be able to speak to him, to have everything that was necessary to have a relationship, something that could feel that you can make feel something that you can speak to, something that you can think about and address, something that you can listen to. That was the ultimate purpose, is that my dad always used to tell me, the reason that God made the world is because God had a lot of love to give, and he needed something to give it to. But the thing, and that's what my father used to say, but the thing is, with that, is what is really more rewarding? If you had like a child, and anybody who is a parent watching this would probably understand this even better. I'm not a parent, but I'm just saying from what I've heard from parents and what I've observed, when you're a parent, would you rather have a child that basically is a vegetable? I don't necessarily mean this in an insulting way, but even like would you want, like, would your first choice, for lack of a better way of putting it, be a child that's completely paralyzed, that could just barely move, and that honestly has you don't know what's going on in there because they can't speak either? Basically, and again, I am not doing this to mock. I'm doing this just as an example. Would you rather have, if you were a parent, would you rather this be your child 24/7, constantly without end? They can't even move. You have to like come and like clean their drool. You have to feed them, and they never speak. They never move a muscle. They never really reciprocate. You may love them and shower them with love, and you know that ultimately, of course, they love you, but there's no way to get those things together, Wouldn't you, for lack of a better term, rather Have something that can run into your arms. You can go running around with something that you can hold, that you can talk to, that you can teach things to, that you can engage in and get to know their personality and have a back and forth, and they mature and they learn from you, and even you learn from them, and it's a real living, true back and forth connection relationship. That's what God ultimately wants, is that back and forth living relationship with us. It's the most important thing to him. And it's for that reason that he placed what appears to be an image of a man at the epicenter of his courtroom, his throne room, whatever, however you want to say it, the divine court, and that's what that man is. It stands there as a testimonial that that man, human beings, were the purpose of creation. They were the reason that God did all this in the first place. And that's why he created us with free will and intelligence and the ability to think and reason, because he can then have a true, real, loving relationship, a real back and forth connection. Because it's one thing, for example, to just give love to something and just give, even if you don't expect a reward from it or to be given love back, but, just give, oh my God, I forgot where I was going with that. Give me a minute, I'll remember. What was it? Reciprocal. That's the word. God wanted something to be reciprocal, because that's how you can have a real relationship. And yeah. Was there one more point I wanted to make before I close out? Nah, I think I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Well, that about sums everything up I wanted to talk about in this now going on for a very long multi-part video. I hope you guys will watch it. I hope you guys will enjoy and get something out of it. Again, please, if you can, like and hit that subscribe button. And yeah, I'll see you next time with more, who knows? Anyway, this has been another episode of The Disgruntled Believer with your host, The Disgruntled Believer. Thank you, Moshe Kaufman. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Have a good one. Bye.